So the idea of the conversation today is to talk about how to build a great team. It's culture, building work ethic, and what kind of tools can be used as well. And so, what before we get into that conversation, what I wanted to do was just share very short aspect of my journey and the company that I'm running, so that you have context of where I'm coming, whatever it is that I'm about to say kind of fits into this context, right? And so if you're running an organization that is very different from what I am doing, then certain things might or might not apply to what you're doing as well. But just so that we know what is the background on this, I just quickly give you a little bit about who I am and what I do, right? So a little about me. As Akanksha mentioned, I'm co-founder and chief executive at ClientJoy, where we are helping agencies and freelancers grow. I did my mechanical engineering from NITS, and then I worked as an investment banker. I also am an MITx bootcamper and a Kairos fellow, and have won some awards as well. I write about thoughts and frameworks around running an organization on yasha.in, which is a blog that I maintain, and I'd encourage you to go there and check that out as well, right? So a little about ClientJoy. We help, as I said, we help 4,000 plus agencies and freelancers in 90 plus countries. And we've raised 3 rounds of equity financing. We've won over 9 awards, from CNBC TV 18 Young Turks to Inc. 42 Change Awards to CIO Choice Awards, and so on and so forth. We've also had more than 25 media mentions, and we currently are a team of about 31 members as well. So that's a little bit of background on who I am and what I do. Right? Moving on to like the agenda for today, it's primarily broken down into 3 parts. So the first is we'll talk about how to find a co-founder and some of the things that you could do to make sure that you and your co-founder are able to work together properly. The second is I'll also share with you some fundamental principles and ideas around building your early team or building your core team. The third is we'll also talk about what are some of the tools that we've used and I'd recommend to you as well that you can check out for facilitating internal collaboration, for helping you with acquisition of talent and retention and so on and so forth. And then I think we'll open it up to questions. I'd also say that at any point of time, if you have any questions, I'd just put those down in the chats as well. I'll be able to read those chats, and if relevant at that point of time, I'll pick up those questions, or else we'll take up all the questions towards the end as well. Right? Before we start with finding a co-founder, it's important for us to get straight on a couple of things, right? So the first thing is that we may have heard or we may think that great performing teams, they work in perfect harmony, right? And this is something that you may have heard from leaders of impactful organizations and enterprises, and this may also be in a sense your expectation from the team that you're building as well. And so the first thing that I want to clarify for you is this is one of the biggest myths, right? So it is super wrong. If the expectation that you have is for your team to work in perfect harmony, you're essentially setting yourself up for failure, right? It's important to remember and understand that there are going to be conflicts, there are going to be issues, there are going to be inefficiencies. And I think the role of founders, or the role of at least one of the co-founders, has to be just making sure that the team is happy, making sure that the team is putting out the best work that they can. As less conflicts as possible, there are as less issues as possible. Aim towards that perfect harmony, but it is important to remember that it's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and so remember that if you don't expectation that if you build a great team, perfect harmony. The second thing that I want to also share with you is the fact that any business that you build, whether it's a very early stage business, a startup, or anything, any organization that you build, which could be an NGO, not for profit, whatever the case may be. Ultimately, it's about the people, right? The people who are working on your product, on your sales, in your marketing, compliance, accounting, whatever the case may be. And so their inspirations, their passions, their ambitions, all of these things essentially have to take center stage when you are planning for scaling up, when you're planning for building more features, when you're planning for adding more services, when you're planning for scaling down, whatever it is that you're doing, their motivations, inspirations, passions, and ambitions, they have to take you want to grow your business around these things, and then find the right people who kind of align with your own or your company's own or your startup's own motivations, inspirations, passions, and ambitions. So I just want to clarify that for you as well. So moving on to the first aspect, which is just finding the right co-founders. And so in our journey, when we started Client Joy, I started it with Abhishek and Anupama. Both of them have been my longtime friends, and so we've known each other since school, and we worked on college projects and live projects, and even when we were at our jobs, which were in different places, we still had the opportunity to work on hobby projects together, right? And then since we had done that, we'd become really good friends. We'd cried together, we've laughed together, we've taken trips together, we've done all of those things. This company, and so I was lucky in the sense that I did not have to go out there and find co-founders. And so this specific segment is going to be short, since I've seen other people find the right co-founders, and I kind of know what are the steps that they took, but I've never done this myself, and so I don't know what are some of the pitfalls that you should avoid, right? But so here's a couple of things that you may want to know when you are looking or finding your co-founders, right? So the first thing is that when you have an idea and you've written, let's say, some amount of a pitch or a business plan, or you created some sort of financial projections, or you're looking to raise funds, or you're looking to interview your potential clients or customers or users, you may want to identify skill sets that are required to grow your startup, right? So let's say if you're an engineer or a tech guy, you may want to look for a person who's into marketing and sales. And if you are from finance, then you may want to look for a person who's into technology and so on and so forth. And so you may want to firstly identify what are the skill sets that are required. Now, one of the things that you may also want to understand at this stage is that don't go for skill sets that are super broad in nature, right? So don't go for if you're looking for a tech co-founder, any tech co-founder will do. Anyone who knows technology will do. That's not how it works. You need a tech guy who works on web applications and who's worked on mobile applications and who knows how to build those things, right? And so that's a very specific aspect of building a tech company, as an example, right? So don't go out there looking for a marketing guy, or don't go out there looking for a finance guy. You need a very specific person who has done, let's say, ops, or who has done finance ops, or who's done specific parts of let's say digital marketing, as an example, and so on and so forth. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to identify what are the skills that are required to grow this company or grow the startup, and then kind of build a list of skill sets before you start looking for people. The second thing, and this is one of the things that I've seen a lot of people who are looking for co-founders kind of try to avoid, which is that they don't share their ideas with other people. And since they don't share their ideas with other people, not enough people get to know about what thing that you're building. You'll often see this on LinkedIn as well, where people say that they're working on their startup that is in stealth mode. If you ask them what are they working on, they'll share very vague details with you, or they'll ask to sign an NDA or something to that effect. If you're doing that, I highly recommend against that, and I'll be able to explore more on why I recommend against that, and how can you avoid the issues of of someone else copying your ideas in the question section. But for now, it's important that if you're looking for a person from the market who can become your co-founder, then you should not refrain from sharing your idea. You always want to network with people. You always want to share your ideas with as many people as possible, because you never know who'll be able to help. The other quick thing is that networks help you identify or find co-founders exponentially faster than you yourself could, right? So as an example, if I'm able to convince 3 irrelevant people that my idea is good and that I'm looking for a person, if they're motivated to help me find a co-founder, then I'll be able to get to the right person that much faster, right? Because now instead of 1 person, there are 3 people who are looking for a co-founder in this company, right? And don't be afraid to give them something on behalf. So you'll also see a lot of times organizations do this, right? So they say, we'll gift an iPhone if you if we recruit a co-founder, if we recruit a project manager, if we recruit a tech lead, or whatever the case may be, who's a person that you've recommended, and so give people something in return for helping you into finding people that are really important to you or who are a part of your core team. The third is ask difficult questions, right? Don't just have don't look for co-founders who want to become part of a mutual admiration society, right? Where you are telling him how great your ideas is, and he or she is telling you back how great the idea is, and you're working together. Make sure that you're asking them difficult questions, and that if the difficult questions are asked to you, then you're sharing your honest opinion as well. And so this seems like when I was writing this, it seemed like a fairly vague advice, and so I just wanted to share with you some examples of difficult questions, right? And so these are 4 or 5 examples that qualify as difficult questions. So when you are being introduced with your co-founders, ask them what their risk tolerance is. Up until the time that your startup generates any meaningful amount of revenue, how are they planning to support their family? Ask them what are their priorities from monetary standpoint. For the time that if you raise funds or if you're able to get some amount of revenue, what is the amount of money they'll need on a monthly basis to sustain, for them to not think about finances. Third example could be what happens if the startup shuts down, or worse, what happens if the startup's caught in a limbo. There's just no place to go. You're just caught in it, and you're just kind of trying to get out of it. Fourth is what motivates them the most about this. What are their expectations from you? Right? These are some example difficult questions that you could ask to a potential co-founder once you kind of had the opportunity to meet and greet and you've shared your idea or they've shared theirs. If you are being offered a co-foundership somewhere, then do ask these questions. Here are some examples of really great difficult questions, because it doesn't just tell you about, it doesn't just give answer to these questions, it also tells you more about the person that you're looking to work with, right? So that's the first bit around finding co-founders. Just very quickly, those 3 key things. Identify the skill sets that are required to grow your startup. Don't be very open-ended in terms of saying that, I'm looking for a marketing guy or a sales guy. Second is network as much as possible, motivate and give back to the people who are helping you find your co-founders or core team members, and don't be afraid to share your idea. The third is ask difficult questions and share your honest opinions when you are asked those questions as well. The next part of this conversation is what I want to talk about is principles of team building, right? And so I just want to share with you 5 basic principles of building fundamental principles of building a team. Okay? If at any point of time, Akanksha, if there's any issue with my audio or anything like that, just let me know and I'll fix that. I think I heard someone say something. Is everything okay, Akanksha? Okay.
Yes, sir, it's perfectly fine.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Nishal. So here are the 5 basic principles, right? So the first is that have absolute zero tolerance for assholes on your team. even if you've recruited them, even if you've given them high salary, even if they are really, really good at doing their job, just have absolute zero tolerance for assholes. Right? If the other person is not treating your team members nicely, just let them go and finish the conversation right there and then. I've seen really great team members because there was this one asshole who was just making bad about the work that they were doing, who just didn't know how to treat other person right. You know? And so that's the first principle. This is the golden principle. And also, by definition, don't be an asshole yourself. Just be nice to other people. There are always better ways to communicate your disappointment or disapproval. Second is as much as possible, push for written and asynchronous communication. Right? And so there are a couple of things for that. When I say written or asynchronous communication, I don't necessarily mean that ask people to put everything on email, right? Or ask people to put everything in writing. That's not the intent of this. The reason why you want to push people for written and asynchronous communication is twofold. Right? So the first is, when you're doing everything real time, you don't really think before you type a message. You must have had friends, or maybe you are one of those people who will write messages that are 3 words or 2 words, because that's how we type on what reply to people, right? You reply with emojis and stuff like that. So what that does is that when people are sharing, when people are talking about strategy, when people are talking about whatever it is that they want to talk about, and if they are doing that in real-time format, which is chat over, let's say, Microsoft Teams or Slack or whatever it is, they don't think enough. So they don't invest enough time before saying things. And as and when you scale your team, you'll realize that a lot of times your team members are just saying things that don't even mean anything. They're good team members. They're great at what they do. But since they have to respond and they want to respond, they just write something that is absolute zero meaning. It happens every day. And so push for written asynchronous communication. Right? And so ask people to formulate what they want to communicate properly, format it, and then send it across to everyone else in the team. Right? It pushes people to think harder. It pushes people to write better, pushes people to become better communicators. The third is always value the output that has been achieved over the effort that is being put in. Right? And so it doesn't matter whether the person worked for 10 hours or 15 hours or 2 hours or 1 hour. If the outcome is achieved, if the output is achieved, then you don't look at the efforts that have been put in. Right? You can celebrate the effort that was being put in if something doesn't work out, if something fails. However, if you consistently value the effort that is being put in across all of your team, across all of your initiatives, then you'll often see people talking in the language of, I did this for 8 hours, I did this for 3 days, I did this for 10 days, and so on and so forth. And people should necessarily talk in terms of, we released this feature, we solved these 3 tickets, we closed these 5 deals, or whatever the case. Right? So value output that is achieved over the effort that is being put in. The fourth is never people for bad outcomes. Right? If you punish people in your team for bad outcomes, they'll not take initiatives. So punish only and only for intent. If you know that when this act was being done, the intent was not good, only and only in those cases punish them. If the outcome is bad, but the intent was good, encourage them to not make the same mistake again, right? And push people not to make the same mistakes again. But if you start punishing for bad outcomes on your team, then they're not going to take initiatives, right? They're always going to wait for approval. And so this is something that we do day in and day out. If we have a new social media manager joining our team, on day 1, she has access to put everything on Facebook. If we have a new copywriter who joins our team, on day 1, he has access to the 25,000 email IDs that he has the permission to send mail to, right? And so if always punish for bad intent and not for outcomes, right? Give them the right, give them the authority, give them the freedom to make those mistakes. The fifth is is if you are making a promise, then be consistent and compliant with your promises. And this is not even about the bigger promises about success and stuff like that, right? These are very, very small little promises. And so they are to the effect of, if someone comes up to you and asks you, can we sit in 10 minutes? And you say, yeah, we can sit in 10 minutes. And then if you take 20 minutes, that's not consistent or compliant. So even even a small promise, as little as being compliant with the time that you have assigned for a conversation to a team member, or being consistent with that, it has a much larger impact, because people will always look up to you to understand and know what are the behaviors that are acceptable in the organization. And so it's very important that you lead with example, and that you are always consistent with your thought process. You're always compliant with your promises. So here are a couple of things that you can do while you are building your team, right? And so the first is some of the 4 key things to remember. The first is always understand what motivates them. What are the things that tick them off, right? Second is, why are they working with you, right? If they have chosen to work with you, why should they, and why are they currently working with you, right? Someone's taking out about a third of their day, or probably more in early stages, and then dedicating all of their time, skills, capabilities to building something that you own. And then why are they doing that? The third is, how do you establish your authority, right? How do you be nice? How do you be the good guy and still are able to establish the necessary authority that you should be able to? How can you be taken seriously? And the fourth thing to remember is, don't treat them as employees, right? And that's something that we always make sure, even at Client Joy, we always refer to everyone as team members, right? If you see, and so this comes from very small little things. If you see any of our team photographs, or if you visit the Team Client Joy account on social media, you'll not find me as the co-founder and CEO standing in the center, right? I'm always somewhere else, right? And so it is. So it is these kind of things that make them feel that then when we call them as team members and not employees, and when we are working with them and we are not making them work for us, and when these small little things happen, they kind of create a good impact as well. The second aspect of team building is and this is something that kind of goes almost in every scenario, whether you are pitching to an investor, whether you are trying to do sales with a customer or a client, or when you're talking to your parents, or when you're talking to your spouse, whatever the case is, you have to realize that you're talking to the other person who's the center of their own universe, right? They have their own problems, they have their own challenges, they have their own opportunities, they have their own families, they have their own lives. And so your problems are not necessarily important for them, right? And so it's so important to remember this in almost everything when you are dealing with an external stakeholders, and obviously when you're dealing with your talent or team members, early stage team as well. Now let's go over some of the things that you can do for acquiring, for onboarding, for retaining your team members, and then there are certain other miscellaneous things. So the first is where can you acquire people? So identify sources of people who want what you have to offer, right? So don't just go everywhere and talk about the fact that you're looking for interesting team members. So I'll give you an example. So when we are looking for let's say a backend engineer for our team, there are a couple of options that we have, right? And so what we do is that we look out at services companies that are operating in Ahmedabad, where a backend engineer is also working on those applications that are being built by those services companies. And we approach them and we tell them that do you want to work with a product company? Do you want to work on a product where what you ship is actually being used by real customers, right? Where जो client बोलेगा वो होगा, that's not the approach. We have a host of customers, we generate insights, and then basis that we make decisions on what we should build and what we should not build. Do you want to work on that product? And more often than not, we'll find those people. So services people want to work in product. You'll also see the other way around, right? Product people also want to work in services because there are a lot of challenges and different kind of projects that you get to work on. And so it's important that when you're looking for a role, identify sources of people who want what you have to offer as an organization, and then try and approach them. The second is large part of your first conversation has to be understanding their journey. And so you may give a very quick 2 or 3 minute background around what your startup is and what this role is, but not more than that. Just try and understand what their journey has been. Why did they make certain decision that they did? What kind of work have they been doing in the last couple of assignments that they had, or the companies that they were working with, and try and understand their thought process. Right? The third is, just because the other person is not relevant because of, let's say, their compensation expectations or their location or their age or their profile, just because the other person is not relevant for you, it doesn't mean that you don't talk to them. Meet with as many people as possible. When you're looking to acquire talent, you want to meet with as many people as possible, even though that is not for the role that you're looking for. And so that is also why you'll see that in a lot of forward-thinking companies, let's say like Slack or Notion, you'll always see a job opening that just says generalist, right? So this is for the people who don't fit in any of those roles that they have, but this is generally good people that you want to have around, right? And so meet with everyone. The second aspect is onboarding, right? And so you always want to make sure that everyone who's working on whatever it is, which includes you and your co-founders as well, is absolutely clear on what they are expected to do, right? And what are their expectations. And then second thing is that during the onboarding, also understand what they want, what are the motivations, and then find ways in which you can fulfill them. More often than not, you don't even need to go out of your way to fulfill their expectations, right? More often than not, they're just looking to learn more. They're looking to interact with customers more, and they're very small little things. But if you're able to do and fulfill some of those expectations, then the onboarding becomes a lot better. The third aspect is retention. So that once you acquired, if you have a funnel that's leaking, if you're acquiring talent which is also going out, then it just doesn't make sense. And so it's like just rowing in the same position, right? The boat's just kind of swirling around because people are not working together at all. And so retention is never ever the most important thing. Is, I think there's an issue over here. I copy pasted from the onboarding on a slide, and so I just changed that. But so the second thing is that never ever be condescending to people, right? This also kind of correlates to don't be an asshole and don't have zero tolerance for assholes as well. The second thing for retention is also this, that make sure that you are able to create a network within your team, right? So one of the things that we do is we have people do sessions for our team, right? So we have a lot of connections in the growth, in product growth, in tech aspect of the product, in SaaS and so on and so forth. And so we invite people to do exclusive internal sessions for our organization. Right? And so that essentially also encourages them and motivates them to have a conversation around those things within themselves as well. Right? And so then you are not required as the person to always be there. They are also able to work together within each other. Then here are a couple of miscellaneous things. Right? So the first is that you always want to value diligence and consistency within your team as well. You want to reward people who are consistent with what they say and do, and who are diligent with what they are, what their output is. Right? So you always want to value that. The second is that when a team member is going through a personal difficulty, just lend your shoulder, right? Just be around, just be with them, have a conversation. If you've been through something that is similar to what they are going through, Then share your personal experience as well with them. And the third is celebrate little victories, right? Always celebrate the smallest of victories within the team as well, right? The additional thing that I'd also like to share with you is hearing no. And this is kind of true from investors, from customers, from other stakeholders, from potential team members, from potential co-founders as well. Hearing no is not bad. Hearing no from people is the biggest time saver. And so you want to take no like a champion, right? Because a lot of times what might happen is that you initiated a conversation, you were talking to them, and then they'll just ghost you. And when they ghost you, you keep on following up with them, and you still think that this conversation is alive, but actually it's not. Right? And so you always want to get to a point when you're building your team, when you're finding a co-founder, you want to get to a point where they either say no to you or yes, but the conversation should not be in a limbo. And assume that you'll be rejected probably 5 times in a day. And so take in no like a champion as well. So moving on to the last aspect of this conversation, which is where we want to talk about what are some of the tools that you can use as well. And so these are some of the very, and I'll be happy to elaborate on these tools a little later during the Q&A as well. But these are some of the tools that can help you acquire a team, make sure that they are able to work in most efficient way possible, and that you are able to retain team members as well. And so the first is from an acquisition standpoint, we've seen, and again, so this is in context to what we are working on Client Joy, which is where we mostly need product people, tech people, design people, and marketing people, digital marketing people. And so for primarily for these 4 roles, Indeed Premium, AngelList Free, and LinkedIn Premium works best for acquiring people. So we'd use LinkedIn Premium for senior leadership positions. We'll use Angel typically for tech and product and design positions. We'll use Indeed for positions that are not as senior. So they are super junior and just kind of fresher or a couple of years of work experience. The second is for internal collaboration, you use Notion and Office 365. And so Office 365 is essentially your Outlook and Teams and OneDrive, which is your Excel, PowerPoint, all of those things. So that kind of helps us build document together, have communication with the rest of the world, have communication internally, and so on and so forth. And Notion is basically the brains behind our organization. Everything that we do, every decision that we make, the reason why those decisions have been made, the processes that we've set, the initiatives that we are taking, all of those things are documented in Notion, right? And so whenever, even something that is even my investor reporting every month happens on Notion. All of those, when a new team member joins, what is the leave policy for the organization is there in Notion. And so all of our onboarding, everything happens in Notion itself, right? And so Notion is also primarily where our asynchronous communication happens. So this is where people will typically write down their ideas and suggestions and recommendations and feedbacks as well. Our monthly meetings also happen on Notion. The third is basically these 3 things for retention. And so KK and internal sessions are okay. KK is an HR software, so you can use a payroll software, something like Razorpay or KK, or there are a couple of other options as well. And Mooncamp is really cool though. So Mooncamp basically helps you manage your OKRs and helps you manage your one-on-ones, right? And so OKR is a framework that I think most of us would be aware about. If not, then I can take those questions and explain. But so OKR is basically objective and key results, and so we manage all of our OKRs in Mooncamp, and then which is again linked with Notion. Then KK and sessions is something that we use for our HRMS and payroll and so on and so on. So there are some other tools that we use. I'm not really sure as to what level of understanding or what size of companies are we running. And so if there are more questions on the tools, I'd be happy to kind of explain them to you during the Q&A as well. And so that's kind of it. So these are some of the thoughts that I had on building the team, on acquiring talent, finding co-founders, retaining them, and managing them as well. Again, I just very, very quickly reiterate, if you are expecting that a great team will work in perfect harmony, that's not an expectation that's going to be fulfilled. And so you always want to be ready for either you or one of your co-founders to make sure that the team is happy. There are as less conflicts and issues and inefficiencies as possible. Additionally, before we open it up to Q&A, I'd also like to share that there's an amazing culture deck that has been put out by Reid Hoffman, who's the CEO at Netflix, I think, even now. And so that you want to check out on SlideShare. So just head over to SlideShare, search for Culture Deck Netflix, and it's about 139 pages of what are the guiding principles of culture at Netflix. And you obviously you'll be able to find a lot more insights than what I've given to you during this session as well, and you'll be able to get a lot more on once you have a team that is large enough, how do you communicate culture? How do you make sure that we are aligned and we have the same vision going forward? So that's kind of primarily it. Akanksha, we'd be happy to take up any questions if we have.
Sure. So Yash, did you look at a few questions in the chat section, or should I kind of read it out?
Yeah, there are. So I can start answering them. I was just wondering if whether I should start.
Oh yeah, definitely, please.
Okay, awesome.
Podium.
Sure. So I think so. Ruchika asked, can't we just collaborate with people for their skill sets instead of seeing them as co-founders, because co-founders share the ownership as well? Fair question. And so you want to. So there are a couple of things that you want to know, right? So. You want to make sure that the people, so on a one-way street, right? So it's not like the company gives the ownership, but then on the other side, the co-founder does not give any ownership back to the company. And so there are things that can be outsourced, and you can collaborate and work with freelancers, or you can collaborate and work with services companies and so on and so forth. So let's say if you're a non-tech co-founder, so let's assume you are an MBA from a great B school, and you have 5-6 years of work experience, and you have an idea that's very specific to an industry and market that is large enough. You started with an initial capital of 1 crore, and you want to build a mobile app. And so why have a tech co-founder and then give them equity in the business when you can give 20 lakhs to an IT service company to build a mobile app, right? So very fair question. And so it's important for you to remember that what are your priorities. If the mobile application is not as important to running the business, then outsourcing is completely fine, and just collaborating with freelancers and services companies is completely fine. But if that is the core business, then you want a co-founder who will take ownership of making sure that the application runs as well. You don't want to, have every time that there's a change request, you don't want to have a conversation with the IT service company that whether this was in scope or not in scope. They also have their own business to run, and they have their own priorities. They may be serving 10 other clients, much like yourself, and so you're one out of those 10 clients that they are serving. In terms of if you have a co-founder, then this company, this app, this product is the number one priority, right? And so while you give them ownership of the company, they also are taking that ownership and then giving you some ownership back, just by making sure that they are just focusing on it. So as an example, if you're building, let's say, a media company, then you can have a co-founder that's a tech co-founder, but then you can outsource some aspect of content creation to freelancers. And so you want to build a level of things up until which outsourcing is fine, and post which you need a co-founder. I hope that answers your question, Ruchika. If there's anything else, do mention that in the chat, or I think you can unmute yourself and then say something as well. Completely up to you. Nal asks, does it always have to be based on the skill sets? Can it also be about having a shared passion? So, okay, just one. Great. So, does it always have to be based on the skill set? Passion, I mean, it's an unpopular opinion. Passion, जितना ज़्यादा है और जितना जल्दी आ सकता है उतना जल्दी जा भी सकता है. And so you may not realize this for the first couple of years, probably for 6 months or a year or so. But passion does not necessarily mean that you'll be able to do that thing well. So I typically give my own example. I'm good at resource management and finance management, and I'm also passionate about singing. And so the people who've been listening to me for the past half an hour or whatever already can imagine how badly I would be singing. And so just because people have passion doesn't mean what they're good at. And so you want to hire people who are good at what you need, or find co-founders who are good at what you need, rather than who are passionate. There's a great talk, there's a great kind of a lecture by Ben Horowitz on YouTube. It's about 11-12 minutes long. It's around where he's giving a graduation speech in some B school in US, and he's saying you should not follow your passion, right? You should do something that you're good at. Don't just follow passion and do something that you may never end up contributing in any form of value. So make sure that it has to be either existing skills or future skills, but achievable skills, right? So I know I can never be a good singer, but I'm passionate, and so that's important to remember. There's a difference between being passionate and being good. The second, I think Anuja Joshi asks how to achieve a good balance between outsourcing, collaboration, and co-founders. So as I shared with Ruchika as well, you want to identify things that are urgent but not important. So there are things that are urgent, not urgent, important, not important. You can do a forecast for matrix, and then identify things that are absolutely urgent for you. So they should happen like tomorrow, but they're not as important. Right? And so an example could be, we want to start working on SEO, and so it's super urgent that we start, let's say, writing blogs, or we starting our backlinking activities, or we start our on-page SEO, and so on and so forth. So they're super urgent for you, but they're not as important. They are not detrimental to the organization. And so those are the things that you can outsource. Collaboration typically happens when. I'm not really sure how do you collaborate. So when I hear collaborate, it primarily means partnership of some sort. But do feel free, Anuja, to clarify what do you mean when you say collaborate. And then co-founders or founders are for things that are absolutely important, and may not be as urgent or could be urgent as well. So if the mobile application of your product is super important, then you want a co-founder to be able to do that, or to be able to lead a team that does that, and so on and so forth. So just divide the work that you have to do into urgent, not urgent, important, not important, and then two quadrants, which is urgent and not important, and not urgent, not important. Those two quadrants can be outsourced to people. I think Jayesh asks, it would be great if you can share glimpses of these tools. Do you want me to? I can share links with you over here if you want, but I think showing you glimpses of these tools is at least a 30-minute thing here. So I'll share the links, I think, with Akanksha after the call is over. Is that okay, or do we have time? What do you say?
So you have time. If you want to kind of cover it, you can, but you can also share it as resource material, which we'll be sending to the team. So whatever is comfortable to you.
Sure. So then in that case, let me share glimpses of a couple of things, right? So Office 365 is very well understood. You already know Outlook and Teams and OneDrive. So I'm not going to, it's not important for me to share that. Let me share Notion as an example, and so that might help you get a little more understanding on how we work, right? So just one sec. So this is our company Notion account. This is our growth section. So this is basically everything that we are doing on marketing or growth for ClientJoy. And hello.
Hello.
Yes.
One second, I think.
कौन बोलते हैं?
Okay.
I'm sorry. I think somebody is talking on.
Yeah, I think they are not on mute.
Yeah, I've muted him. Continue. I'm so sorry for the interruption.
No worries. So as an example, this is all of our marketing and related activities, and so I'll show you two cases. So the first is, let's say, the growth basics, right? This is something that we show to people when they join our growth team, whether as a digital marketing guy or content writer or partnerships manager, whatever the case may be, right? And so, what is Client Joy? What's our title? What are taglines? When we say that Client Joy is a CRM and growth engine for agencies, what do we mean? How do we define our customers? What are their characteristics? So they bill their clients by the hour, 80% of their expenses, salaries of these people. So we want our growth team members, or people who are going to interact with our customers, to get in the mindset of our customers, right? And so we also have a presentation of what their business model is like, right? And so, these are the 5 business models that our customers have, right? And so it's important for our team members to know what are the business models that our customers have, what's our primary market, what are the verticals, what is the size, what are the locations. Here's some amount of empathy mapping of our team members. Where do our customers spend most of their time in terms of learning, growing, exploring, connecting? So learning, for our customers go to Quora, YouTube courses, they listen to podcasts, attend webinars to learn. They go to Upwork, Fiverr, etc. to grow, and so on and so forth. This is basically like a very quick, snapshot or a guide to who Client Joy customer is, right? So as an example, another example is let's say if we go into these are public enough. So if you go into Client Joy website, right? Or actually, instead of going into Client Joy website, I'll show you emails, right? So these are all the 5 categories of emails that go to our leads or contacts or customers. So these are transactional emails, which are, let's say, emails like sign up, forgot password. These are in-app product emails. So as an example, this is a guideline when an invoice is sent, when an invoice is resent, when invoice payment has been recorded, and so on and so forth. And so all of these are emails that go out from the system. And another example is, let's say, billing emails, which are the emails that go out when a payment fails by a customer or user on Client Joy, right? So very quick idea is that this essentially becomes a key or a core. Similarly, if you go into Client Joy website, you will see that these are all the pages of the website. What's the name of the page? What's the head under which it falls? What's the status? Type, page title, page description, URL, and then social images, right? So these are where we manage what are we saying about our page and what are the pages that we have on the product and so on and so forth, right? And so the idea is that this kind of, normally this happens on our content management system, but the reason why we also have it over here on Notion is because this is the brain of our organization. And so if, let's say, our SEO person leaves tomorrow and a new person comes day after, they can refer to everything that we have in Notion. And so similar is the case with our code, with our product documentation, decisions, all of those things, right? So what is the pricing of the second tier? If an organization, if a large enterprise comes for Client Joy, then how are we going to price for them? All of those things have been documented. Right? So this is just a very simple kind of a snapshot or an example of what we do. Ruchika again, I think, asks, how about we hire the person instead of a co-founder? Oh, you can, for sure. And so if you think that if you have, okay, so here's a good way to go about it. If you have the cash to hire a person, hire them. Right? So if you're able to pay market rates just by yourself, then by no means should you part with equity. Just hire the person and then treat them well, and they'll behave as a co-founder, right? And so and that way you'll not have to give away your equity as well. So if you have the cash, please go ahead and do that. How to get a right co-founder? Thanks, Srinath, for asking me this question. This is a separate session in and of itself. Unfortunately, I'll be very honest with you, I don't have enough experience in finding the right co-founder. When we actually thought of the idea together, and so when we never had this problem for ourselves, and so I definitely not be the right person to explain to you how to find the right co-founder. Right? Any insights into the legalities that one needs to be aware of while co-founding with multiple people? So first, and a couple of things. So depends on what kind of company you're founding. So if you're founding an LLP, then it's important to remember that doesn't mean that just because someone has 10% and you have 90%, it doesn't mean that their votes are also weighed at 10%. In an LLP, all partners are treated equally, right? And so even if a person has 1% or 5% or 10% or 55%, all of those are equal in terms of their voting that happens. If you're running a private limited company, then more often than not, you have all the co-founders on the board as well. You can choose not to have co-founders on the board as well. And the decisions of private limited company are made by the board. Right? And so whether you have or you don't have your co-founders on the board primarily decides the amount of impact that they can have on the decision making of the company. The other thing that I'll also add over here is that if you are the founder and if you are getting a co-founder for your organization, the idea is yours, the money is yours, and if the early traction, the early customers are also yours, then you may want to sign a co-founder agreement with the co-founder that you're bringing on board. And so you'll be able to find a free version of this co-founders agreement on a website called Let's Venture. So search for Let's Venture co-founders agreement or Let's Venture agreement, and you'll be able to find a folder which has sample term sheets, sample shareholder agreements, sample co-founder agreements, and so on and so forth. So you can sign that as well, Anuja. I think that will be helpful. Kunal says, fair enough. Thanks, Kunal. Ruchika again says, what are the pros and cons of being a sole proprietor? So a couple of things. So if you're a sole proprietor, then and so I'm assuming that when you say sole proprietor, you mean sole founder. So because so the company is not sole proprietor, you are the sole founder of a company that is still private limited company, right? So there are a couple of benefits. So one of the benefits is that the decision making becomes very quick and very, very fast. The second is that there's no loss in any sort of communication. The third is that you're able to run companies super fast and very, very efficiently. Then there are some certain cons as well. And so one of the biggest cons is that you don't have anyone else that you can actually talk about in terms of the issues or problems or good things that are happening in your organization. You don't have anyone else who are able to contribute to your idea, make it better, or have debates and arguments and so on and so forth. The third is that you don't have anyone else who will go beyond what their salary kind of expects them to do, and kind of contribute on a lot of other aspects of your organization as well. And so these are some pros and cons of having co-founders in your organization. If equity is really important for you, I don't really see a problem if you're even a sole founder. There are a lot of organizations where they've become really big, even though there was sole founders only. So there's no really data that says that having multiple co-founders has an impact on your success. It can make it faster, it can make it easier, but there's just nothing that says being a sole founder increases your chance of failure or anything like that. Neeraj Bhavsar asks, so it is better to find co-founder of particular fields of our idea other than normal co-founder? Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Same goes for team members, same goes for co-founders, absolutely. Find a co-founder that matches the skill sets that will help your company grow faster. Means that you have two votes, essentially, right? And so I as an investor only have one. However, if Akanksha is not on the board, if it's just the both of us, then both of us have one vote each. And so having a co-founder on the board is actually beneficial for you. You can choose to add the co-founder on the board when the investor comes on the board. So if you don't want to have conflicts, or if you don't want to have inefficiency, what you can do is you can offer co-foundership to Akanksha. She can join as a co-founder. She's still not on the board. Only when I come on the board of the company or I become an investor in the organization is when Akanksha also gets a seat, right? So up until the time that the investor comes in, you're still the sole founder on the board making all the decisions. And then when I come in, you want to have your benefit, and so you can add her as well. Okay. Jayesh asks, Jayesh says, interesting. Thank you, Jayesh. Anuja also says, thank you. Thank you.